The rain battered the windows of the 47th floor office, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out the hum of New York City below. I stood frozen, my heart a traitor, pounding as if it might shatter the glass walls of Ethan Caldwell's empire. 10 years I'd spent in his shadow, and tonight, I was about to ruin everything with a single, reckless confession. My name is Julian Carter, and for a decade, I've been Ethan's assistant as silent, invisible anchor in a world of corporate chaos. At 28, I'm the guy who knows his coffee order, black, no sugar, his schedule, down to the minute, and the exact angle he tilts his head when he's about to close a multi-million-dollar deal. But I also know the things no one else does, the way his hazel eyes soften when he thinks no one's watching, or how his laugh rare as a solar eclipse makes my chest ache like I've been punched. I've loved him in secret, every day, for 10 years. And tonight, at midnight, I was done hiding. The office was a cathedral of glass and steel, all sharp edges and cold surfaces, but it felt alive with the weight of what was coming. Ethan stood by his desk, his suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, his 32-year-old frame radiating the kind of effortless authority that made boardrooms tremble. He was reviewing a contract, his brow furrowed, unaware that I was unraveling at the seams. I clutched a stack of paper's useless props to justify my presence this late and took a step closer, my pulse roaring louder than the storm outside. "Julian, you didn't have to stay," Ethan said without looking up, his voice low, almost tender. "It's past midnight. Go home." I swallowed, my throat dry as ash. I needed to finish the quarterly reports. I lied, setting the papers on his desk. My fingers brushed his. A fleeting accident, and I swear the air crackled. He glanced up, his gaze locking onto mine, and for a moment, the world stopped. Those hazel eyes, sharp and searching, held something I couldn't name, something that terrified and thrilled me. 10 years, I blurted, my voice barely above a whisper. 10 years I've been here, Ethan, and I've never asked for anything. He straightened, his expression unreadable, but he didn't look away. "What are you saying, Julian?" I took a breath, the words clawing their way out. "I'm saying I've been in love with you since the day I walked into this office. And I can't keep pretending I'm not." The silence that followed was deafening. His face didn't change, but his eyes got. His eyes flickered with something raw, something that made my knees weak. Then, slowly, he stepped around the desk, closing the distance between us. I braced for rejection, for the end of everything I'd built. Instead, he reached out, his hand grazing my cheek, and before I could process it, his lips were on mine. The kiss was fire and desperation, a decade of unspoken words poured into a single moment. My hands found his shoulders, clinging to him as if he might vanish. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. "Julian," he whispered, "why didn't you say something sooner?" I laughed, a broken, shaky sound. "Because I was terrified you'd fire me." He smiled a real smile, the kind that could undo mean for the first time in 10 years. I felt seen. But the moment was fragile, a glass sculpture teetering on the edge. Ethan was my boss, a man whose life was a fortress of ambition and secrets. I was his assistant, a black kid from Brooklyn who'd clawed his way into this world. Could this good we survive the weight of who we were? The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual rhythm, but everything felt different. I sat at my desk outside Ethan's glass-walled office, answering emails, scheduling meetings, pretending my world hadn't tilted on its axis. Every time our eyes met through the glass, my heart stuttered. He was still Ethan Caldwell, CEO, untouchable, the man who could make or break fortunes with a signature. But now, he was also the man who'd kissed me like I was his oxygen. By noon, the first cracks appeared. "Sarah," the head of HR, lingered by my desk, her smile too tight. Julian, you've been here forever, haven't you? Ever think about moving on? Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, probing. I brushed it off, but unease coiled in my gut. Sarah was Ethan's confidant, one of the few who knew his private life or thought she did. Did she suspect something? That night, Ethan asked me to stay late again. Not for work, but for us. We sat on the leather couch in his office, the city sprawling below like a sea of stars. He told me about his childhood in Connecticut, the pressure of his father's legacy, the weight of being the perfect son. I told him about growing up in Brooklyn, about my mom working double shifts to keep us afloat, about the first time I realized I was gay and how I hid it, terrified of losing her love. You're braver than me, Ethan said, his hand finding mine. I've spent my life hiding who I am. I wanted to ask what he meant, but his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, his face hardening. It's my father, he said, his voice clipped. He's flying in tomorrow. Wants to talk about the merger. The merger. The deal that could make Ethan's company untouchable or destroy it if it failed. I knew how much it meant to him, how it consumed him. But now, I wondered, where did I fit in his world? As he answered the call, I stared at the rain-slicked windows, my reflection a ghost against the city lights. Last night's kiss had changed everything, but it was only the beginning. 10 years of silence had built a love too big to contain, but it had also built walls of fear, expectation, and secrets. Could we tear them down, or would they bury us? The next day, the office was a pressure cooker. Ethan's father, Richard Caldwell, swept in like a storm, his presence filling the room with an icy authority that made even the senior executives fidget. At 65, he was a silver-haired titan, his tailored suit as sharp as his tongue. I'd met him a handful of times over the years, always from a distance, always as the invisible assistant. Today, though, his eyes lingered on me as he passed my desk, a flicker of suspicion in his gaze. Julian, he said, his voice clipped. Still here. I see. I nodded, forcing a smile. Yes, sir. Still keeping things running. He didn't reply, just strode into Ethan's office, the glass doors closing with a thud that echoed in my chest. Through the walls, I could see their silhouettes. Ethan, tense and upright. Richard, pacing like a predator. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind replayed last night's kiss. Ethan's confession about hiding who he was. Was Richard part of what he was hiding from? By mid-afternoon, the tension spilled over. Ethan emerged from the meeting, his face a mask of control, but his hands were clenched, knuckles white. Julian, I need you to pull the merger projections. Now. His tone was sharp, not unkind, but distant, nothing like the man who'd held my hand last night. I nodded, my stomach twisting, and got to work. As I sifted through files, Sarah appeared again, her smile more predatory than before. You and Ethan seem close, she said, leaning against my desk. Late nights, long hours. Must be exhausting. It's my job, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. Just make sure you know where the line is. Julian. People talk. Her words were a blade, slicing through the fragile hope I'd been clinging to. People talk. Did she know? Had someone seen us? The office was a fishbowl, every move scrutinized. I'd always been careful, invisible, but last night had changed the rules. That evening, Ethan found me in the file room, his expression softer but strained. I'm sorry about earlier, he said, closing the door behind him. My father gets under my skin. What did he want? I asked, my voice low. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening. He's pushing for the merger, but he's also asking questions about my personal life. My heart sank. About us. No, he said quickly, too quickly. He doesn't know, but he's always looking for weaknesses. If he thought, he trailed off, his eyes searching mine. Julian, I want thesis. But it's not simple. Not with him. Not with the company. I stepped closer, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I've waited 10 years. Ethan, I'm not afraid of complicated. He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. You should be. Before I could respond, he kissed me again, quick and fierce, like he was stealing a moment before the world could take it away. When he pulled back, his hand lingered on my arm. Meet me tonight. My place. We need to talk, really talk. I nodded, my pulse racing. His place. Not the office. Not a stolen moment in the shadows. But his world. It felt like a step forward. A promise. But as I watched him walk away, Sarah's warning echoed in my mind. People talk. That night, Ethan's apartment was a revelation. A penthouse in Manhattan. All sleek lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. It screamed wealth, but felt strangely empty. He greeted me in jeans and a t-shirt. A version of him I'd never seen. Unguarded and almost boyish. We sat on his couch, a bottle of wine between us. And for hours, we really talked. About his fear of disappointing his father. About my fear of never being enough. About the world that expected us to be something we weren't. I've known I was gay since I was 16. Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But I buried it. My father, he'd never accept it. The company, the family namites, all he cares about. I reached for his hand, my fingers intertwining with his. You don't have to hide anymore. Not with me. He looked at me, his eyes raw with vulnerability. What if I lose everything? Then we'll figure it out together, I said, and I meant it. But the next day, reality crashed in. An email from Sarah, flagged urgent, landed in my inbox. Meeting with HR. 10 a.m. Sharp. My stomach dropped. When I walked into the conference room, Sarah was there, along with 2 other executives, their faces grim. Julian, Sarah began, her voice cold. We've received reports of inappropriate behavior. Specifically, regarding your relationship with Mr. Caldwell. The room spun. What are you talking about? I managed, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at me. We have a witness, she said, sliding a photo across the table. It was grainy, taken through the office window last night, Ethan and me. Mid-kiss. My world tilted. Someone had been watching. Someone had known. And now, they were using it against us. The photo lay on the table like a guillotine. My breath caught, trapped in my chest, as Sarah's eyes bored into me. The 2 executives flanking her said nothing, their silence louder than any accusation. This is a private matter, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It has no bearing on my work. Sarah leaned forward, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Julian, you're an assistant. Ethan is the CEO. The optics alone are a problem. And with the merger on the line, she paused, letting the weight of her words settle. We can't afford a scandal. I wanted to scream that this wasn't a scandal, that love wasn't a crime. But I knew better. In this world of glass towers and ruthless ambition, perception was everything. And Ethan's father was circling like a shark. I'll talk to Ethan, I said, standing. This isn't over. Sarah's smile tightened. Be careful, Julian. Loyalty is admirable, but it can cost you. I left the room, my heart pounding, and headed straight for Ethan's office. He was on a call, his back to the glass wall, but the moment he saw me, he ended it. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. I closed the door and slid the photo across his desk. His face paled as he stared at it, his fingers tightening around the edges. "Who took this?" "I don't know," I said. "But Sarah's got it, and she's threatening to make it a problem." Ethan's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he looked like the man I'd seen in boardrooms, unyielding and fierce. But then his shoulders sagged, and he ran a hand through his hair. "This is my fault. I should have been more careful." "No," I said, stepping closer. "This is us. We're in this together. Remember?" He looked at me, his eyes searching, and for a moment, I thought he'd pull me into his arms. But he didn't. Instead, he turned to the window, staring at the city below. "My father can't know," he said, his voice hollow. "If he finds out, he'll destroy us both." The words stung, but I understood. Richard Caldwell wasn't just a father. He was a force of nature, a man who'd built an empire and expected his son to uphold it. Ethan had spent his life trying to prove himself worthy. Coming out especially now, with the merger at stake, could cost him everything. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan turned, his expression torn. "We keep this quiet. For now. I'll handle Sarah." But handling Sarah wasn't as simple as he thought. Over the next few days, the office became a minefield. Whispers followed me in the break room. Glances lingered too long. I overheard two junior executives muttering about favoritism and inappropriate relationships. My skin burned with every word, but I kept my head down, doing my job, pretending nothing had changed. Ethan, meanwhile, was a ghost. He buried himself in merger negotiations, spending long hours with his father and the board. When we did cross paths, his smiles were fleeting, his touches cautious. I told myself it was temporary, that he was protecting us. But doubt crept in, cold and relentless. Was I a secret he was ashamed of? One night, unable to sleep, I went to his apartment unannounced. He opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. "Julian, it's late. I can't keep doing this," I interrupted, stepping inside. The secrecy, the whispers, Sarah breathing down my neck. "I need to know where we stand." He sighed, closing the door. "I'm trying to protect you. If my father finds out, he'll fire you. Or worse. Worse than losing you." I shot back. "Because that's what it feels like." His eyes softened, and he reached for me, pulling me into a hug. "You're not losing me," he whispered. "I just need time." Time. The one thing I'd given him for 10 years. I wanted to believe him. But the photo, Sarah's threats, the weight of his father's expectations, they were walls closing in. The next day, a new blow landed. An anonymous email circulated to the senior staff. The photo attached with a single line, "Is this the leadership we trust?" Panic clawed at me as I watched Ethan's face when he saw it. He didn't look at me, didn't speak. He just called an emergency meeting with the board, leaving me to field calls and emails from investors demanding answers. By evening, the office was a war zone. Reporters were circling, sniffing for a story. Ethan's father stormed in, his face thunderous. "Fix this, Ethan," he barked, not sparing me a glance. "Or I will." That night, Ethan asked me to meet him at a quiet bar in Brooklyn, far from the corporate glare. He looked exhausted, his eyes shadowed, but when he saw me, he smiled a real smile, the kind that made my heart ache. "I'm done hiding," he said, taking my hand under the table. I don't care what my father thinks, or Sarah, or the board. I want you, Julian. I want us. The words were everything I dreamed of hearing. But as we left the bar, hand in hand, a camera flashed from across the street. Someone had followed us. The camera flash was a gunshot in the dark, shattering the fragile bubble of our moment. Ethan's hand tightened around mine, his body tensing as we scanned the street. A figure ducked into an alley, too quick to identify, but the damage was done. We need to go, Ethan said, his voice low, urgent. He pulled me toward his car, parked a block away, and we drove in silence to his apartment. My mind raced. Who was it? A reporter? Someone from the office? Sarah? The anonymous email had already spread like wildfire. This photo could be the spark that burned everything down. Inside his penthouse, Ethan paced, his phone buzzing incessantly. This is bad, he muttered, scrolling through messages. The board's freaking out. Investors are pulling back. My father's livid. I sat on the couch, my hands clenched, trying to stay calm. What do we do? He stopped, looking at me, his eyes raw with conflict. I don't know, Julian. If we go public, it could tank the merger. If we don't, he trailed off, but I knew what he meant. If we didn't, we'd be back to hiding, to stolen kisses and whispered promises. I'm tired of being your secret, I said, my voice breaking. 10 years. Ethan. I've loved you in silence for 10 years. I can't do it anymore. He crossed the room in 2 strides, kneeling in front of me, his hands on my knees. You're not a secret. You're the only real thing in my life. But the Susit's bigger than just us now. The company, the employees, the merger, thousands of people depend on me. His words were a knife, twisting in my chest. I wanted to be enough, to be his priority, but I saw the weight he carried. The company wasn't just his father's legacy. It was his. And I'd seen him fight for it, tooth and nail, for a decade. Then what? I asked, my voice barely audible. We pretend nothing happened. Go back to being boss and assistant. No, he said fiercely. I'm not losing you. We'll figure this out. Together. But together felt like a fragile promise when the next morning's headline screamed, Caldwell CEO caught in scandal with assistant. The photo from the bar was everywhere, grainy, but unmistakable. My face, Ethan's, our hands entwined. Social media exploded, some calling it a corporate disgrace, others cheering for love winning. I stayed off my phone, but the office was a battlefield. Colleagues avoided my eyes, their whispers cutting like glass. Ethan called a press conference, his face a mask of calm as he faced the cameras. I watched from the back of the room, my heart in my throat. The rumors are exaggerated, he said, his voice steady. My personal life is just that personal. My focus remains on this company and its future. He didn't deny us, but he didn't confirm us either. It was a tightrope, and I wasn't sure if he'd balanced it or fallen. When he stepped off the podium, his eyes found mine, a silent apology in them. But before we could talk, his father pulled him aside, his face a storm cloud. I went back to my desk, trying to focus, but Sarah was waiting. You're playing a dangerous game, Julian, she said, her voice low. This isn't just about you two. The board's talking about a vote of no confidence. For what? I snapped. For him being human. For him jeopardizing the merger, she said. And for you, complicating things. I wanted to tell her to go to hell, but my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Meet me tonight. My place. We need a plan. That night, his apartment felt differentless, like a sanctuary. more like a war room. He'd spread out documents on the dining table, merger contracts, financial projections, board member profiles. If we're going to do this, he said, we need to be smart. My father's pushing for a vote to replace me as CEO. We have to move fast. Do what? I asked, my heart racing. Go public. Fight the board. Both, he said, his eyes burning with determination. I'm done letting them control me. But I need you with me. Julian, can you do that? I nodded, but fear gnawed at me. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about power, money, and a world that didn't want us to win. Over the next few days, we strategized. Ethan worked the board, calling in favors, while I dug into the merger's fine print, looking for leverage. We were a team, stronger than ever, but the pressure was crushing. Late nights blurred into early mornings, our stolen moments of affection overshadowed by the fight to save his career and our future. Then, a breakthrough. I found a clause in the merger contract that gave Ethan's company an out if the partner firm misrepresented their financials. And they had. Armed with this, Ethan called an emergency board meeting, ready to turn the tables. But as we walked into the boardroom, Richard Caldwell stood at the head of the table, his eyes cold. Ethan, he said, his voice like ice, step down, or I'll make sure you lose everything. The boardroom was a battlefield, every face a mask of calculation. Richard Caldwell's ultimatum hung in the air, a blade poised to strike. Ethan stood tall, his jaw set, but I could see the tremor in his hands, the weight of his father's words pressing down on him. I'm not stepping down, Ethan said, his voice steady but laced with defiance. This company is mine. I've bled for it. And I've found evidence that the merger partner's been cooking their books. He slid a folder across the table, the documents I'd uncovered laid out like ammunition. The board members exchanged glances, their murmurs filling the room. Richard's face darkened, but he didn't speak. Not yet. One of the senior board members, Claire Hensley, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, opened the folder. This is serious, she said, her tone measured. If true, it changes everything. It's true, I said, stepping forward, my voice cutting through the tension. I cross-checked their financials. They've been hiding losses for years. All eyes turned to me, some skeptical, others surprised. I was the assistant, the background player, not supposed to speak in rooms like this. But I held my ground, my heart pounding. Ethan shot me a look of gratitude, pride, and something deeper. Richard finally spoke, his voice low and venomous. This is a distraction. Ethan, your personal indiscretions have jeopardized this company's reputation. Step down, or I'll expose you myself. The room went silent. Ethan's face paled, but he didn't flinch. Expose what? Father. That I'm in love. That I'm human. The word love hit like a shockwave. The board members shifted uncomfortably, but Ethan didn't stop. I've spent my life trying to be what you wanted. Perfect son. Perfect CEO. But I'm done pretending. Julian is my partner. In every sense. And if you can't handle that, that's your problem, not mine. My chest tightened, tears prickling my eyes. He'd said it. Out loud. In front of everyone. No more hiding. Richard's face twisted with rage. You're throwing away everything for him. No, Ethan said, his voice unwavering. I'm building something real. Claire cleared her throat, breaking the tension. This is a lot to process. Let's focus on the merger evidence for now. Ethan, Julian, we'll review these documents and reconvene tomorrow. As the board filed out, Richard lingered, his eyes locked on Ethan. "This isn't over," he said, then stormed out. In the quiet that followed, Ethan turned to me, his expression a mix of exhaustion and relief. "I meant it," he said softly. "You're my partner." I wanted to kiss him, to hold him, but we were still in the boardroom, the weight of the fight still heavy. Instead, I squeezed his hand. "We're not done yet." That night, we worked late, preparing for the next day's meeting. The evidence was solid, but the board was unpredictable, and Richard's influence ran deep. We knew he'd fight dirty. Sure enough, the next morning, a new article dropped. Caldwell CEO's secret romance threatens empire. It was brutal, painting Ethan as reckless, me as an opportunist. Social media was worse, tearing us apart with slurs and speculation. I tried to stay strong, but the hate cut deep. I'd fought to belong in this world black, gay. From nothing, and now it was spitting me out. Ethan saw it in my face, pulling me into his office and shutting the door. "Don't let them win," he said, his hands cupping my face. "You're stronger than this." "We're stronger." I nodded, but doubt lingered. "What if we lose everything?" "Then we start over," he said, his voice fierce. "Together." The board meeting the next day was chaos. Claire presented our evidence, confirming the merger partner's fraud. The room erupted, some calling for the deal to be scrapped, others loyal to Richard demanding Ethan's resignation. Richard himself sat silent, his eyes burning with calculation. When it came time to vote, my heart stopped. One by one, the board members spoke. Claire sided with Ethan, then two others. But Richard had allies, and the votes were tied. The final vote came down to a quiet older man, George Ramsey, who'd barely spoken. "I've known Ethan since he was a boy," George said, his voice steady. "He's made this company what it is. I vote for him to stay." Relief flooded me, but Richard wasn't done. He stood, his voice cold. "You've won this round, Ethan, but you've lost my respect." He walked out, leaving a chill in his wake. The merger was dead, but Ethan kept his position. We'd won for now. But as we left the boardroom, hand in hand, I knew the real fight was just beginning. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk. The merger's collapse sent shockwaves through the company, with stock prices dipping and investors grumbling. Ethan worked around the clock, reassuring stakeholders, rebuilding trust. I was by his side, no longer just his assistant, but his partner in every sense. We were out now, our relationship no longer a secret, and the world had opinions loud once. Support came in waves, unexpected and overwhelming. Emails from employees, some I'd never spoken to, poured in, sharing their own stories of coming out, of hiding who they were. A young intern, Miah, stopped me in the hallway, her voice trembling. "You and Ethan, you give me hope I can be myself one day." But the hate was just as fierce. Online trolls spewed venom, and a few board members still loyal to Richard whispered about revisiting leadership. Sarah, demoted after her role in leaking the photo came to light, left the company, but not before sending me a final email. "You'll regret this." Ethan's father was the biggest shadow. He'd retreated to his estate in Connecticut, but his silence was louder than any threat. Ethan tried to act unfazed, but I saw the toll it took, late nights staring at his phone, waiting for a call that never came. One evening, as we sat in his apartment, I brought it up. "You need to talk to him," I said, my hand resting on his. "He's your father. You can't keep avoiding this." Ethan's jaw tightened. He made his choice when he walked out of that boardroom. "But you haven't made yours," I said gently. "You're still carrying him with you." He looked at me, his eyes raw, and nodded. "You're right. I'll go see him. But only if you come with me." The drive to Connecticut was quiet, the countryside a blur of green and gold. Richard's estate was a sprawling mansion, all stone and ivy, a monument to his power. When we arrived, he was in his study, surrounded by books and bourbon. He didn't stand when we entered, his eyes flicking from Ethan to me with undisguised disdain. "You brought him," Richard said, his voice flat. "Bold move." "He's my partner," Ethan said, his tone steady. "And he's not going anywhere." Richard leaned back, swirling his drink. "You've thrown away everything I built for you." "For what?" "A fling." "It's not a fling," Ethan snapped. "I love him. And I'm done living for your approval." The words hung between them, heavy and final. Richard's face didn't change, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something pain. Maybe. Or regret. "Get out," he said quietly. "Both of you." We left without another word, the weight of his rejection settling over us like a storm cloud. In the car, Ethan was silent, his hands gripping the wheel. I reached for him, my voice soft. "You did what you needed to do." He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "I just lost my father. Julian." "No," I said, squeezing his hand. "You chose yourself." Back in New York, we threw ourselves into rebuilding. Ethan launched a new initiative, diversifying the company's portfolio to stabilize its finances. I took on a bigger role, no longer just an assistant, but a strategic advisor. My voice finally heard. We were a team, stronger for it, but the world outside wasn't done testing us. One night, as we walked through Central Park, a man approached us, his face hidden under a hoodie. "You're Ethan Caldwell, right?" he asked, his voice low. Before we could respond, he pulled out a phone, snapping photos. "This'll fetch a good price." Ethan grabbed my arm, pulling me away, but the encounter left us shaken. The media frenzy hadn't died down. If anything, it was growing. Articles speculated about our relationship, our motives, our future. Some painted us as heroes, others as villains. "We can't keep running," I said that night, curled up on Ethan's couch. "We need to take control of the narrative." He looked at me, a spark of determination in his eyes. "You're right. Let's do an interview. Tell our story, our way." We chose a respected journalist, a woman known for her fairness. The interview was set for the following week, a live broadcast from our office. As the date approached, nerves gnawed at me. This was a tour chance to show the world who we were, not who they thought we were. But it was also a risk. One wrong word, and we could lose everything we'd fought for. The studio lights were blinding, the camera lenses like unblinking eyes. Ethan and I sat side by side on a sleek black couch. The journalist, Emma Larson, across from us. Her smile was warm, but her questions were sharp, designed to cut through the noise. The world was watching, and my heart pounded so loud I was sure the mic would pick it up. "Ethan, Julian," Emma began, "your relationship has sparked intense debate. Why go public now?" Ethan took my hand, his grip steady, grounding me. "Because we're done hiding," he said, his voice clear. "For 10 years, Julian was my rock, my partner in ways no one saw. I love him, and I'm proud to stand beside him." The words hit me like a wave, washing away the fear. I squeezed his hand, finding my voice. I spent a decade in the shadows, loving him in silence. Coming out wasn't just about it was about showing others they don't have to hide who they are. Emma nodded, her eyes softening. "But the backlash has been fierce. Ethan, your father's disapproval, the board's resistance, how do you navigate that?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "My father's choices are his own. As for the board, They've seen what Julian and I can do together. We saved the company from a bad merger. We're stronger as a team. The interview went on, peeling back layers of our story. I talked about growing up in Brooklyn, the fear of being out in a world that wasn't always kind. Ethan shared his struggle to reconcile his identity with his father's expectations. By the end, Emma's eyes were misty, and even the crew seemed moved. The broadcast went viral. Messages flooded in support. Mostly, but also hate. For every "you're an inspiration" email, there was a "you're disgusting" tweet. But something shifted. Employees started wearing rainbow pins at work. A major client, a tech giant, publicly endorsed us, boosting the company's stock. Still, Richard's silence loomed. Ethan didn't talk about it, but I saw the pain in his eyes, the way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how. A week later, we got a call from Claire, the board member who'd backed us. Richards requested a meeting. She said, "Just you, Ethan. No Julian." Ethan's face hardened. If he wants to talk, Julian's there. Non-negotiable. Claire sighed. "I'll pass it along, but be prepared. He's not happy." The meeting was set for Richard's estate. This time, I felt the weight of it more than ever. As we drove, Ethan was quiet, his hands tight on the wheel. "Whatever happens," he said finally, "we face it together." Richard was waiting in his study, his expression unreadable. "Sit," he said, gesturing to 2 chairs. No bourbon this time. No posturing. Just a tired man facing his son. "I watched your interview," Richard said, his voice low. "You've made a spectacle of yourself. Of this family." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "I've made a life. One I'm proud of. If you can't see that, that's on you." Richard's gaze flicked to me, then back to Ethan. "And him. He's worth all this." "More than you'll ever know," Ethan said, his voice steady. For a long moment, Richard said nothing. Then, to my shock, he sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I don't understand you, Ethan. But I'm trying." It wasn't acceptance. Not fully. But it was a crack in the wall. Ethan's eyes softened, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. Back in New York, we focused on the future. Ethan promoted me officially to strategic advisor, a role that let me step out of the shadows. We launched a company-wide diversity initiative, inspired by Miah and others who'd shared their stories. The office felt different now, less like a fortress, more like a community. But the world outside wasn't done with us. A tabloid published a new photo, this one from Central Park, with a headline screaming Caldwell's boyfriend, gold digger, or true love. The accusations stung, but Ethan just laughed, pulling me close. "Let them talk," he said. "We know the truth." And we did. 10 years of silence had built something unbreakable. We were no longer boss and assistant, but partners, in love and in life. The seasons changed. New York's skyline shifting from summer haze to autumn fire. Ethan and I settled into a new rhythm, our lives intertwined in ways I'd only dreamed of. The company stabilized, the diversity initiative gaining traction, and slowly, the media frenzy faded. We weren't headlines anymore. We were just us. But scars lingered. Ethan still checked his phone for a call from his father that rarely came. When it did, the conversations were short, guarded, but each one felt like a small victory. Richard was trying, in his own way, and Ethan held on to that hope like a lifeline. One crisp October evening, we walked through Brooklyn, my old neighborhood, the streets alive with laughter and music. I showed Ethan the stoop where I'd sit as a kid, dreaming of a life bigger than the one I knew. I never imagined this, I said, gesturing to him. To us. You were my impossible dream. He smiled, pulling me close. You're mine, too. That night, he proposed. Not with a ring or a grand gesture, but with a quiet question as we stood on his balcony, the city glittering below. Marry me, Julian, he said, his voice soft but sure. I want forever with you. Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, unable to speak. We kissed, the world fading away, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged not just to him, but to the life we were building. The wedding was small, just close friends and family in a quiet garden upstate. My mom cried, hugging Ethan like he was her own. Richard came, to everyone's surprise, standing stiffly at the back. He didn't speak, but when Ethan extended a hand, he took it, a silent acknowledgement. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. A year later, we launched a foundation to support LGBTQ youth, inspired by the stories we'd heard. Miah, now a full-time employee, led the first workshop, her confidence a testament to how far we'd come. The company thrived, not despite us, but because of user love, our fight, our refusal to break. One night, as we lay in bed, Ethan traced circles on my hand, his voice quiet. 10 years I had you by my side, and I never saw you. How did I get so lucky? I laughed, kissing his forehead. You didn't. I just stopped being silent. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy, painful, and hard one. But it was ours. 10 years of silence had led to one midnight kiss, and that kiss had changed everything. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living fully, openly, unapologetically. And as the city hummed outside, I knew we'd face whatever came next. Together,